In the South Africa of the 1890s, Africans and Indians alike endured the whims of their white masters, living under laws denying them the right to vote, own property, or even walk the streets after dark. Dedicated to righting those wrongs, Gandhi was at first woefully naive in the ways of power politics.
As a lawyer, he believes that we change the laws, we change human behavior. And so from 1893 to 1906, he is bound and determined in the law courts to do something. Now, the problem is that the British are smarter than he is during this time, and every time he changes one law, another law is put into place in order to make the discrimination work in another manner.
Victimized by white South Africans, Gandhi resolved to act as a unifying force. He began developing communities of people from different races and religions, all brought together to live as equals. He insisted on treating his own family, which soon included 4 young sons, no differently than anyone else. Despite his abhorrence of British oppression, until 1906, Gandhi considered himself a faithful member of the empire, even singing "God Save the Queen" and teaching it to his children. So loyal, in fact, that he served as a stretcher-bearer alongside British troops in the Boer War and the Zulu Uprising of 1906.
It was actually the experiences in the Zulu War which really brought him very close to inhuman violence, because that was when he realized that this war was not just a war between two people, but it was a real massacre.
He recoiled as British Gatling guns slaughtered Zulus armed with spears. He saw the pleasure soldiers took in killing, and he collected the shattered bodies of wounded left to die in agony.
He begins to think that the Zulus are being dominated by the British in this way. What does domination mean? And he thinks about his own domination in his family, and particularly of his wife. He has been married, age 13, and he has been at times what he calls a cruel, a jealous, a dominating husband. And it's this fascinating mode then of thinking, triggered by the Zulu rebellion, seeing how the British dominating the Zulus, and he takes it within himself, how am I guilty of this dominating kind of behavior? And he says, I'm guilty of it in my own marriage, in my relationship with Kasturba.
Within the Hindu tradition is the ideal of a man who has so conquered his sexuality that he achieves a childlike innocence. Only by mastering his own desires, Gandhi decided, could he best serve humanity. At age 37, he took the Hindu vow of brahmacharya, permanent celibacy.
So if he was totally pure, then there'll be no impurity, no violence, no aggression around him.
In 1906, he immediately followed his personal transformation with a stunning political insight. New laws decreed that all Indians must be registered and fingerprinted. The provisions included having Indian women stripped for white police, so body marks could be noted on the registration form. Incensed, 3,000 Indians met in Johannesburg to plan a course of action.
Suddenly, a Muslim merchant stands up and he shakes his fist and he says, "By God, I will go to prison before I obey this law." And Gandhi hadn't thought of this before, had not thought of going to prison. But he knew instinctively that this was the right way to go. And he gets up and he says, we will take a vow to God that we will go to prison and we will stay there until this law is withdrawn.
Gandhi's speech sparked off an historically unprecedented act of mass civil disobedience. Following his lead, protesters endured repeated police beatings, bravely accepting their suffering without retaliation.
He realized for the first time in his life that when human heart is closed, you can't touch the human head. There is no use reasoning with a person whose heart is full of prejudices. If reason is not enough, violence is not good, what do? And he discovers in South Africa for the first time the method of non-violent resistance. You stand up against your opponent, tell him that you will not give in, but you also reassure him that you will do him no harm.
Gandhi coined the term satyagraha, a combination of two Sanskrit words meaning truth and the pursuit of, to describe his revolutionary concept. The goal of nonviolence was as old as human philosophy. Gandhi's insight was to apply the ideal to practical political situations.
Mahatma Gandhi feel in order to implement genuine non-violence, they first, in your own mind, the peace or the spirit of reconciliation must develop. So without that, how can you implement genuine non-violence?
In 1913, General Jan Smuts, the English puppet chief in South Africa, passed laws decreeing Hindu and Muslim marriages invalid. Gandhi jumped on the blunder to inspire a wider revolt.
And grandfather typically came home one day and told my grandmother that you are no longer my wife, you are my concubine. And she flared up and said, what are you talking about? And so he explained that this is the law, and so our marriage is no longer recognized, and we are living together illegally.
Traditionally, Indian women were restricted to the home. Gandhi attacked such customs as another form of oppression and called on women to shoulder public responsibilities. In one crafty stroke, he had helped to emancipate millions and added a powerful new tool to his arsenal. The marriage laws touched off a national strike. 50,000 indentured laborers took up the cause and walked off their jobs. General Smuts relented, rescinding the marriage laws. Gandhi had proved that willpower could overcome brute force. Eager to challenge England on his home ground, in 1915, at age 45, he returned to an India strangling under the yoke of imperialism. For 2 centuries, the British had systematically plundered India's natural resources. Deprived of raw material, native industries withered away. India was the largest, most populous, and most profitable outpost in the empire.
And they brought India down to such a point where we couldn't even manufacture a little safety pin. We didn't have the capacity to make a little safety pin. That was the state at which they had reduced us over the years of exploitation.
By 1915, 300 million Indians bowed before just 100,000 English invaders. Never in history had so few ruled so many, from so far away. Despairing of ever regaining their freedom, Indians collaborated in their own enslavement, providing soldiers and police to enforce. Time and again, British authorities unwittingly played into Gandhi's hands by inflaming public opinion. In 1919, he protested oppressive